It's cold out here.
Yeah, it is. It's like the South Pole.
It's like the deep South Pole, if there was one. There isn't, though.
Thanks for walking me in my door.
Yeah.
The fact that we've got this circumpolar current going around in these, the easterly winds, which make no sense on a spinning globe. It's spinning to the east. You can't spin to the east and have attached atmosphere and winds going faster in that direction than the spin. And these are the things we're trying to point out, or north-south as far as the seasons go. I mean, it's not even a question of which one better matches reality when you're talking about the globe versus the AE map for seasonality. The globe makes absolutely no sense with the tilt and the whole ideas of that, and the way, Dave Weiss has done a great job over and over again of explaining how it cannot be that the sun is closer to us during the winter, which again, if you don't know that, that's the heliocentric belief that during the northern winter, the sun is closer to the Earth by 375 Earth diameters, over 3 million miles closer during the summer. During our winter. It's just not the case. But then when you look at the AE map and you understand the fact that the sun is further from the north in the winter, then it comes back to the equator, comes back up north for the summer, and things just make sense. And then it explains why the frozen tundra of Antarctica is a wasteland with no plants, no animals besides your 5 or 10 and your penguins. But the north is all filled with all types of animals and species and plants and flowers. And yet after you get to like 50 degrees south, they say you can't even find a brush or a bush or grass or anything like that.
All right.
So it makes sense on the AE map and doesn't make sense on the globe. And that's why we're saying what we're saying. We've found a better model, and we're trying to get the whole pieces put together of it. So you haven't found a better model. You're just saying this one needs to be boycotted. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. I agreed. And
yeah, 80,000. I think I got it down to 30, which was just basically taking one of those cruises. And even those, and people have seen this, there's only like 2 places really that you can go to Antarctica. It's like the little tail that we've all seen that comes out by South America, and then the other side by Australia. It's just not what people think. Like you can just show up at the shore. And I've had people tell me all the time, why don't you get a boat, rent a boat, go down there? It's like, go down there and what? Like, so then we get to the shore of Antarctica. There's no McDonald's. You have to have food packed for months. Like if you're going to go deep into it, where are you going to get the equipment? Where are you going to get these skidoos or these snowmobiles? What do you do with the boat? The boat just take off and leaves you in Antarctica? There's so many things.
And you can't even take any fuel oil down below 70 south.
Yeah, you can't store any fuel on your boat. Yeah, and these are all things that people just don't, I guess, consider. I mean, the boats, the ones that are at least within the price range, I've seen a few that are like $800,000 for a week or a month. It's $1 million just to get the boat, and they don't go very fast. They go like 10 or 15 miles per hour down there. That's a huge trip when you consider, even as the globe tells us, it's 14,000 miles around, I guess. Think about how long that would take, even if you had somebody driving the entire time. So say you've got 2 skippers on the boat and they take alternating shifts of 12 hours or whatever. Even at 24 hours a day and going 15 miles per hour, which I think is faster than most of those go, that's 360 miles in a day. But then you have to figure, okay, well, now we need to go a total of what we say 14,000, so 15,000 miles. So you're talking about quite a bit of time. What is that, like 40 days? I'm doing math now. 40 days just to do a circumnavigation. Well, to rent that kind of boat, that's so expensive, especially when you can't carry the fuel. How are you going to even go around? Now, if you're talking about taking a sailboat, you're cutting your speed down even more. So I just don't think people really understand. They think it's easy. Anybody can go down there. And I know I made a mistake in the past of saying that the Antarctic Treaty didn't allow people to go down there. No, it does allow people to go down there. It says you can go down there, but we will provide no support. We will not help you in any way. They're making it so it's very difficult for you to do. And, I think it was Ace that called my show the other night when I did the phone call-ins, who talked about his cousin. And I hope I have this story right, but he basically sailed down from up around Alaska area, around the bottom of South America, and was going to go back up to the east coast of the United States, and was sailing by himself in like a catamaran or something. And he got stopped by the New Zealand patrol down when he was trying to circle around the bottom of South America, and they like got on his boat, went through all his stuff, and checked all his tubs of, or whatever they're called, barrels of water that he had to take with him, like fresh water. That these guys like really were digging deep into what exactly he was doing down there. So you can make a joke about, oh, don't go to the ice wall, they'll shoot you. You can make that joke all you want. I've yet to see anybody do it to show that that's wrong. So, go get on a boat then. Go drive to Antarctica, get up on the ice, and then show everybody that you could do it. But I've never seen that yet, and I think there's a reason for it. I don't think they'll let you.
In fact, look at, who is it, Jarls Andahoy, right? Who went down there on the boat, and he got straight up turned back at gunpoint, right? So even if you were able to have enough resource to go down there and do everything, had a nice big boat like he did that's capable of cutting through the ice, getting down there, the whole 9 yards. If you happen to have enough money to be able to do that and go down there on your own, then it's, we've already had evidence from more than one person, but he's one guy that comes to mind right away, the Andahoy guy, that got straight up turned back, right? They're not going to let anybody see it.
No, and if you do have the means to do so, I'm certainly not stopping you from doing it. By all means, try and go down there and, stream it live somehow to where if you are actually stopped, people can see it happen, and that would be huge news. That would be the kind of breakthrough that we would need in this particular instance. So it's not as easy as people say, but I'm certainly not stopping anybody from doing whatever they can, because I think that the key is Antarctica. And there's so many examples of that. And the fact that we've got all these countries that are against each other and they're all fighting, and whether or not there's going to be World War III and Putin and Trump, but we all get along when it comes to Antarctica. We've all agreed that it's just peaceful purposes. Nobody's allowed to go down there and do mining for materials, and it just is the exact thing that you would have if there was secrets down there that you couldn't let out, that you couldn't let people know that there could possibly be more water on the other side, that there could possibly be more continents. What you would do is you would militarize or secure that outer perimeter, and it certainly seems like what's going on. Nobody's saying there's 40,000 boats of patrolmen out there patrolling that area, but with radar, with everything that they've got, it'd be very easy for them to know when somebody is crossed into the 60-degree mark or so, and they'll send somebody out to meet you. It doesn't mean there's a patrol boat that's out there constantly just waiting for people. Their boat's faster than yours.
I know. Isn't that a point that Cool Hard Logic made? What are they going to do? Have everybody holding hands across there? It's like, are you serious?
Yeah, he calculated like how many boats would be needed to patrol the outer edge. And that's just crazy. I mean, again, like straw man arguments. And nobody said that there is an armada of ships out there, surrounding the entire thing. And also knowing how GPS works, I mean, it's also going to be kind of focusing you down. No matter if you leave Australia or leave South America, it's kind of going to push you, just with the way that the longitude latitude works. It's going to push you to one area, which is what I've been trying to tell people. That I know I'm not saying it well, so it's hard for people to grasp. But we are at the behest of the layout that they've given us. It doesn't mean that that's the layout. I mean, people think, well, here's longitude, latitude. That means that that's the layout. It doesn't mean that. You can take a vast piece of paper or a vast plane, look at the floor of your bedroom. You can take that whole floor, and if you wanted to keep little people in one area, you could design a system of coordinates that keeps people in a circle. They would have to stay right there. As long as you put the North Pole magnet in the middle, then everybody just circles around there. And they would think, well, this is the longitude, latitude, so it's the way it is. They don't realize the whole rest of the floor is wide open. That just because somebody has laid it out for us and said, these are the directions and this is how you stay true to GPS, and that doesn't mean that that is the way it is. I mean, I know people think that must be, and well, people fly by it and it works, and of course it works. It wouldn't be a deception if it didn't work. That it works to keep you where they want to keep you. And I just think we owe it to ourselves and each other to really make sure that these things are facts, and especially when you've got space agencies that are the only ones that are the keepers of all that knowledge. We just have to accept it and say, okay, this is true. And if there's only one source for information, then we better be damn sure that that is true, or we're not even just hurting ourselves, but we're hurting every future generation.
Everyone, it's been a while. I wanted to make a really quick video of something that I've been wanting to cover. This image here is from Antarctica in space. This is actually released to the public in October of 2015. That and several other images from space of Antarctica. Now, when you look at it, a lot of people have this on their desktop and they hail it to be an absolute proof of it being a ball. And here you can get a lot of trolls, a lot of hate, and as you can see here, this guy, Nick Taylor, you are retarded. Everybody who doesn't think this is real, this person here wants to tell you that you are retarded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the actual file where they got this from. I will put this link where you can download this anywhere on a computer and just do some basic analyzations on it with Photoshop or any free software that you have, and immediately you can see that this is the same image. It's just turned to the right. But what I want to do is I want to look at the layer here, because this is a background that's transparent. Interesting enough, there is something you can just zoom in, and this line here is supposed to be the atmosphere, and you can see that the mountains go above the atmosphere. Now, in a lot of the other videos that I've shown you, the atmosphere goes up above 250 miles, 500 miles. There are no mountains in the world that are above the atmosphere. Now, if I add a layer behind what we're seeing here, I'm going to make a square. You can clearly see when I zoom in, this is the ozone layer, and you can see that the line of the tip of the mountain goes above the ozone layer. Nowhere on Earth are there any mountains that go above the ozone layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just extend this out a little bit so I can show you everything that it has. Right here you can see everything. Now, with this in the background, you can zoom in and you can see that clear ozone layer more fully, and just go around with the hand tool and start looking at all these computer generated mountains. Now remember that guy in those comments, there's many of them. You can see here the transparency. Look at all the snow, and over here you have something very interesting that you can actually see the color of the water in this area. There's a different kind of blue there. I guess this camera is very precise that you can actually do that, right? Now, when we go up again, you can see the atmosphere, the ozone layer, and more fake mountains. But people are being fed this constantly through news sources and Facebook shares and science websites that this is an actual picture of the globe Earth. Now, if you didn't realize that just from the very start that the mountains coming out of the ozone layer, that's a dead giveaway that this is a fake image. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip it clockwise so we can see that this is the same image that we are looking at in the picture that's depicted in the Facebook comments. Now, here it is. So there's the Facebook comment, picture, article, whatever you want to call it, the post. Sorry about that. And they also brought out more the ozone layer of the globe, maybe with a different background gradient adding to it. So this is the same exact image. You can clearly see that it's the same one. We have the same mountain range here from South America, right there, and right over here. And I will also show you that the majority, when you type in Antarctica from space, you're going to see a lot of computer generated images. And here's some more. I've gone a long time trying to find an actual picture from Antarctica from space, and I'm just not able to find one. Now, when we go back to the image, another thing that we can do, let's turn it back. We can go to the levels. We can see where the light on this image was actually added. So from right here we see the strongest source of light comes from the bottom of Antarctica. That would be another way of showing that where's the sun hitting on the bottom of Antarctica with a sunspot. There's no such thing of that even happening on the heliocentric model. So people who are constantly bashing everybody for this image, showing this image as proof and everything, just really don't know what's going on.
The camera never lies, goes the old adage. Interesting, but Photoshop would like to have a word with you about that. Over the years there have been many misleading photos, some outright fake, some staged, some taken out of context. Here are just a few of them. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 famous photographs that fooled the world. Number 10, the Hurricane Sandy shark. Otherwise known as Jaws' autumn vacation, after Hurricane Sandy struck in 2012, this photo did the rounds, purportedly showing a shark swimming up a submerged street in New Jersey. Well, it turns out the photo was a fake, also circulating after Hurricane Irene in 2011. The original photo actually dates back to 2005, depicting the shark following a kayak. Number 9, the surgeon's photograph. One of the most famous and widely circulated photos in the 1930s, it supposedly depicts the head, neck, and upper body of the Loch Ness Monster, a photographic cockatoo second only to Bigfoot himself. People still believe in Nessie today, despite it being revealed that what's in the photo is actually a toy submarine with a cardboard head and neck attached. Number 8, the Cottingley Fairies. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle created infamous pragmatist and debunker of paranormal theories, Sherlock Holmes. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle also believed in fairies. As such, he championed the Cottingley Fairies photos taken by Francis Griffiths and Elsie Wright in 1917, which depicted fairies. However, decades later, Francis and Elsie themselves admitted that they were in fact forgeries, that the fairies were just cardboard cutouts, but they'd been too embarrassed to tell the author of Sherlock Holmes the truth. Number 7, Lenin, Leon and Lev. Here is a photo of Vladimir Lenin, who was the leader of the Bolsheviks, and you can't teach that. This image of him holding court at a public meeting looks pretty legit, right? Well, it's actually doctored to remove two men. These two men, Leon Trotsky and Lev Kamenev. They are fellow Bolshevik revolutionaries, but why were they removed from the photo? Well, Stalin, Mario cosplayer and murderous despot, had been a fellow Bolshevik and once in power became paranoid of the two men. Despite Kamenev and Trotsky having key roles in the Russian Revolution alongside Stalin and Lenin, Stalin attempted to have both men literally airbrushed out of history. Number 6, Lunch on the Skyscraper. You've seen this photo, it's one of the most iconic in history, depicting a brave, if batshit, lunch of skyscraper constructors in the 1930s. Now, this isn't to say that lunch atop a skyscraper, as it's called, is fake. They're real workers, really up that high, but it's not a candid photo depicting your average lunch for these men. It came out in 2012 that the whole thing was staged as a publicity stunt by the new Rockefeller Center, which is a skyscraper these men just happen to be building. Number 5, the Statue of Liberty Hurricane. Back to Hurricane Sandy and another fabrication that went viral in its wake. Depicted in the photo is the original MILF, aka metaphor I'd like to Lady Liberty, in the foreground of a huge storm. Oh no, thought everyone. Well, turns out it's fake as balls. A composite of two shots. One, a normal picture of the coquettish statue, and the other, a storm in the skies above Nebraska, originally taken by Mike Hollingshead. Number 4, the Lincoln photo. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and you can't teach that. Maybe wrestling references aren't appropriate here. Anyway, look at this picture of a beard model and occasional president, Mr. Abraham Lincoln. He looks like a hero, right? Staunch in his principles and in conviction. It's a fake, obviously. The desk and body actually belong to this man, John Calhoun, and the original image was doctored with Abe's face over it because there weren't enough heroic pictures of him. Number 3, the Megalodon and the U-boat. The Megalodon is a now extinct species of massive shark that would give Jaws an inferiority complex, and despite the fact they're long dead, many believe that there are still some in existence, due in no small part to photos like this that depicts a massive fin and a tail near a U-boat. Now, it turns out that the image was doctored by the Discovery Channel itself for a docu-fictional piece, Megalodon, the Monster Shark Lives. Number 2, Hurricane Carter and Bob Dylan. Hurricane is one of Bob Dylan's most famous songs, written in protest of the jailing of Reuben Carter, a boxer wrongly convicted of a triple homicide. This photo is of Dylan visiting Carter in prison, except it's not completely real. See, Bob Dylan was disappointed when he met Carter because there were no prison bars in between them. They were just two guys in a room. Always PR savvy, Bob had wanted a symbolic photo of their meeting and got the prison guards to lower a metal grill in one of the prison's hallways in order to get a shot of, quote, Carter behind bars. Number 1, Muhammad Ali knocking out Cleveland Williams. It's a photograph synonymous with victory, except this wasn't when the victory happened. This shot is of Williams after being knocked down moments before the bell sounded at the end of round 2. Williams fought on into another round after this photo was taken, before the ref actually stopped the fight. It's a small distinction, yes, but a key one when you consider just how often iconic images are misrepresented by history. Just how often iconic images are misrepresented by history. History. If
you watch right as this one gets going, you'll see that it lists the directions as it's spinning around. It'll say north, south, east, west. And the directions are located behind the mountains. So that there just tells you that somebody has edited the video, period. Doesn't mean that they've edited the sun, doesn't mean anything else. It's just if you're trying to scientifically show something, then to me, you don't do production things like put the locations behind the mountains. I don't even know how you do that. That's with layering. That's what I do. I can do pretty good video edits. I don't know how to do that. So they're layering it in a way that tells me, well, they could easily have layered a sun image.
I'm watching this film, nothing to do with this foolishness of a flat earth, but I'm watching this film and I get around, minute whatever, and I nudge Paul and I said, Paul, this movie just disproved the flat earth.
It's the middle of summer. Check the time, it's just after 12 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock midnight though.
He documents it. You can watch him.
About your directions behind the mountains. I don't think it's a good scientific representation. And for those who don't know, I asked this guy who made this video if I could take it to a video forensics guy. I said, I'll pay for it all. I just want your permission. And he didn't give me permission to do that.
Turns out that the image was doctored by the Discovery Channel itself for a docu-fictional piece.
Clearly, this shows us, if anything, that trickery is afoot. And this is not just one of the months. This is not just 2 of the months. It's not just 5 of the months. This is every month that they have a webcam video for. They have edited and cut out part of the day. And these are during the main months, which are January, December, and November, the southern summer. In this video, let's watch this green flag down below. You'll see it starting around maybe 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rotates around to about 2 o'clock, and then resets. Rotate around, reset. This is obviously a lie. This is obviously not what's going on. Why don't we get to see the sun do a 360-degree turn around the southern continent? Now remember, this would be pretty good evidence and proof of the globe, because it doesn't work on a flat Earth to see the sun go around the southern continent. However, on a globe, it is something that should be really evident and should be seen in every single summer video from the South Pole. But again, watch the flag. It'll start around 8 o'clock, rotate around until it gets to 2, and then reset and start over. This should be a huge eye-opener. Should be something that screams to you fraud, fake, set up, contrived.
A docu-fictional piece.
So I emailed the head of the Australian Antarctic Division there, and she wrote back and basically said that the webcams at their Antarctic stations are subject to very limited internet connections, and frequent interruptions and dropouts are commonplace as the outages due to weather are extreme. Very slow bandwidth means we are unable to have constant streaming video. The time lapses you see on our site are stitched together from photos generated every 15 minutes, and basically saying that there'd be no way that they could have data from a whole entire day. Just taking a look at Mawson Station's current time lapse, for example, the images are being recorded overnight, and nothing appears to be missing. If you do notice anything absent on any of our webcams, please let us know the specifics so we can investigate any potential faults, or even maybe restore images where possible. So I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Why don't you have complete day's videos? You're cutting them yourself. So I wrote back, and she responded with, "Hi Jaron, I've spoken to our web manager, who was not available earlier. He let me know that some frames are actually missing by design. Because the webcams were set up so long ago, he had forgotten about a script he had written to omit frames that are mostly all black to save on space, bandwidth, and overall quality of the video. Chunks of time with just black screens are a bit of a waste." He said that if there is any reasonable light source in the image, then the image would not be omitted, and that the missing frames are based only on the amount of light in the image. That if there is any reasonable light source in the image, then the image would not be omitted, and that the missing frames are based only on the amount of light in the image. Thanks for your email. We will now add this to the FAQ for future webcam visitors. And if you can't tell, this is complete and total horseshit, because what we were just looking at was the summer months when there is no night. It's supposed to be 24 hours of sun going around. Why are those images omitted? So I said, Jen, I still think you aren't quite understanding what I'm saying. If you have time-lapse webcam footage from the Amundsen Scott base, then why is there no 24-hour sun video? You guys have cut and edited every single video. Why? It makes no sense with your answers below about black screens. Please explain. For example, watch all videos for November, December, January, 2011, 2012, 2013. And the most recent email, which came earlier this week, said, "Hi Jaron, the Amundsen Scott Station is an American facility, and for all inquiries regarding their webcam footage, you need to contact them. The information and explanation that Jen provided below still applies to ours. Kind regards, Denise." So I have emailed all the people at the NOAA and the NSF, and we were waiting to see if they've got anything new to say besides just the same nonsense responses. So again, I've sped up this camera footage just a little bit to get you some more views of these time-lapse footages, but it's all much of the same. You'll see shadows going halfway around and then resetting. You can watch the time in every single video to see that never is a whole day played. Sometimes it actually appears that the shadow comes very close to doing some sort of a 360-degree turn, but regardless, you can look at the time and see that at minimum, 8 to 10 hours is cut out of every video. So how could the shadow even be coming close to doing a 360 if you're cutting out a third or more of the day? Again, this is good evidence here. If you watch the purple flag start out very long, then it gets short as it goes in front of you, and then becomes long as it resets and starts over. So as I said, even if you watch that little igloo on the left, it may look really close to a 360-degree turn, but by looking at the time, 10 hours are cut out of that day. That just tells me that these have been edited. So, these are not accurate portrayals of reality. Again, the biggest and most obvious point here is that if it was a globe that we live on, then what they are trying to show us would be 1, easy, 2, occurred daily, and 3, plainly evident. And it is none of those. It looks like they're trying to cut it up. It looks like they're trying to portray something that isn't actually happening. And it looks like they're trying to fool us. Let's pay attention to something here. Watch this shadow as it rotates towards the upper left of the screen. And notice the shadow in this video coincides with the sun, not the opposite as would be required by, physics and optics. The shadow should be opposite of the sun, not rotating in tandem with it. Again, more evidence of extreme trickery, extreme editing. They're simply trying to sell us something that isn't reality.
A docu-fictional piece.
Now, some people have said that it's been debunked, and so I want to bring up some proofs that it has not been. Let's see here. So you should be looking at my browser now. So I found this really cool site. Let me show you where it is here. Okay. So, and it shouldn't shock you. I mean, it's obvious why, but this site is weather.cs.uit.no. It's from the Arctic University of Norway. This is pretty incredible. They have, you can go to any year, previous year, go back even further. And these are all daily time lapses for every single day of that year. And, this is something they don't have in the South. I'm sure people have seen before. Do I have that up? Is it this one? Yeah. So this is the South Pole webcam page. Much different. The fact that, number one, it starts with the live cameras currently down. You can also see time-lapse movies from the camera. So we'll just jump over there real quick. Here's a time-lapse. Takes a little while for it to... Oh, that was quick. So if you go to, for instance, this is set January through March 2016, and we press play on this. So as I pointed out before, if we can just watch this time here and see that the camera skips. So we'll watch it 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So when we're looking for evidence that the sun circles in Antarctica, you would expect to find 24-hour time lapses. It makes no sense why you would have, half a day time lapse. And if anybody remembers, I actually emailed these guys and tried to talk to them about it, and they just made no sense. They said there's not enough bandwidth to do a full day's time. So, but they have enough to do half day. So I was telling him, well, wouldn't it make more sense if you had 1 month of a complete time lapse than 3 months of half day? But again, they said, well, it's not in our mission statement to provide those things. So, but there's a definite problem here when you look at the sun going 13, 14, 15, 16, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we never get to see any of these, and it's the same for all these. So you can go to September to December 2012, bring that up. Again, it takes a little while usually. And we'll show you here that it's the same thing. It cuts out dates and times, or not dates, it cuts out times, and only shows you about half the day. And if we're trying to get proof of a circling sun, that's not going to help us, as we both agree that the sun goes by half the day. So that doesn't help much at all. Is this going to come up or what? Okay. But this is much different. Like I said, these are, 3-month-long time lapses that are skipping days, and you're not going to find much better. Here we go. Let's play with this one. So this is September to December 2012, and you might not be able to see it up here, but again, it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 22, 23, 1, 2, 3. So again, it's completely skipping, over the hours. There's not one complete day in any of these time lapses, which is just a joke. It's like a slap in the face. So that, it makes no sense to me. Why would we have not one day complete? But on that site that I was just telling you about, again, just to give that web address, it's weather.cs.uit.no. And so you can go to any of these. So let's go to, let's go to 2017. maybe we go to June 21st. So you go June 21st, and you can then download you just press the L, and it tells you down here exactly what you are getting. The daily videos, small, medium, large, monthly videos, small, medium, large. So for the monthly, you just go down here and you can pull up. So we'll also pull up like a December monthly. So I'm going to press large on that one, let that download. So once you have these, I'm going to download another one just to have a few. Let's do, we'll go to a previous year, 2015, and maybe a full month from June. And large. Okay, so those are all downloading, and we'll show you those. So very cool site that they have all these time lapses in complete form. There's no time skipping.
So, I mean, really, like you said, John, when you talk about the moon landings being faked and what they went through to really fool us, where would the line stop? I mean, where would you say, no, that's too much? They wouldn't go to that length. At this point, when you look at how long this has been going and the size of the lie, anything is possible. It's hard to say that there's any stretch that they wouldn't go, because it's everything to them. It is the ultimate secret. It is the baseline of the entire lie system is based off this lie of where you live.
I could even see not 24-hour sunlight, but 24-hour sort of daytime in the south, based on the electromagnetic field of the earth and some sort of a Faraday effect, where in the southern summer you could have this sort of phenomenon where the light from the sun is spreading out and around the entire south because of the electromagnetic or the magnetic field that is conducive to it. But
it can travel further, the light, based on where this sun is. If it's here, you're not going to get light traveling over here, right? And if it's here, you're going to get, this much light covered. So you have to kind of look at it that way as far as, and then when you get to the outside, as we get over here, then it's possible that it's lighting up the entire thing. And again, that's the coffee cup caustic. So you'll see here the coffee cup caustic is this, what we see here. And as you get closer to the outside of your lens, you get a lit up area. Now, this is basic. It doesn't mean, again, you can make fun of it all you want. These are the ways of finding what could possibly be true. And so when we have 24-hour sun in the south, could it just be that we're getting 24-hour light, yet the sun itself is still traveling around, causing the outside to light up? So that's why that's cool. And again, you can do extended rays, which kind of give you a clearer idea of what's going on. Then you get this kind of reflected look all the way around. So there's lots to do on this site. Again, it's RickTU 288 github.io. And then again, you can also do a point source. Oops, and let me delete this one out. So anyway, there's just lots that you can do in here. And when talking about the coffee cup caustic, which is when you get too close to this outside and everything lights up, and that's a known effect. And I think people have seen me show it before, but if you go to sun arcs, just to look at what they look like. Okay, so when we just saw that thing that said all images, this is what they were showing, is these kind of effects. And when you see this, or we see this, and you go to a coffee cup caustic, let's see, we'll go this one. So if I do coffee cup caustic, we'll see that that's exactly the same thing. So go here, go images. All right, so you see this effect that it's happening coming out of this glass. It's happening in this coffee cup. No, it doesn't mean we live in a coffee cup. Anybody who surmises that has lost their mind. But you can see these effects that happen because of it, and it just so happens that we're seeing the same effects in reality. So that should tell us that we need to start looking around the ideas of the lens, of water, of reflection, of refraction. That's what's happening, is you've got the light source on the other side lighting up the entire other portions. You know, the light's on the right here coming through, lighting up this. And when we look at sun arcs, it's the same thing. This is almost to a T, it's identical. Now, they want to tell you some nonsense about this, that it's ice crystals in the sky and that they're at the perfect angle. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So just wanted to show that the coffee cup caustic is what's happening. Now, how is it happening? What is causing it to happen? That we don't know, you know, but when you look at this and you go back and look at these, we're seeing the same exact effect. So we need to, here's a simulator, it looks like, showing that here's your point source of light, nephroid caustic in a coffee cup, showing how you get this reflection, but you've got this whole outer area is being lit when the point source of light is here. So, you know, it's not as simple as to say, oh, well, you know, there's 24-hour light in Antarctica. And, you know, I've started looking recently about Antarctica and trying to figure out, do they ever say it's a 24-hour sun? And the more I'm looking, I'm finding them say it's a 24-hour daylight. They may not even claim anymore that the sun does circle your head. It maybe is just a 24-hour daylight, which would be the cause of something like this coffee cup caustic.
Even then, I mean, you know, NASA faking that, I don't know, you'd think they'd have done it by now. And the one video that I've seen of the southern 24-hour sun was just so obviously fake. And the stuff that we've seen in the north, and Bob's seen with his own eyes in the north, and Led Zeppelin wrote a song about it, you know, I mean, it's common knowledge that there is the 24-hour sun in the north, but the south, you know, why would they fake it? I mean, you've caught them in videos faking it, Jaron, where they're cutting out, like, what is it, 5 or 6 hours out of every day. And their claim is, well, we didn't want to waste tape when it was dark. Well, there you have it.
Right.
Actually,
That's
go ahead.
I was going to say, that's exactly right, John. But Jaron's right. You know, it's like there isn't anything that they wouldn't, you know, stop at, because obviously this is really coming down to, you know, one of the main issues being the 24-hour sun in the south. You know, Jaron has busted them time and time and time again, you know, cutting out anywhere from 5 to 8 hours of footage, and then trying to claim that there is a 24-hour sun. He's written them, you know, gotten responses from them. You know, basically their response is, well, that's not really our department, or you know, there's too much, it would take too much bandwidth, you know, all these ridiculous excuses, you know. So obviously if they aren't going to do it via a straight up CGI, which is entirely possible, then who's to say that they couldn't launch something up in the sky, you know, with their little fake sun patent, and make it at least appear that there's a local sun, and navigate it around in a circle? I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility at all. And I think that, you know, when it comes down to brass tacks, they may be prompted into doing something that desperate.
Well, look at, they can control balloons, right? And they can lift 8,000 pounds. So I'm pretty sure you could put a pretty bright ass light on a balloon, and if you can control its path, you just have it circle. I don't put it past them.
A face that quakes, the wind, the fire of conquered country, crown and throne. Why can't I cross this river? Angel, angel, what have I done? A face that quakes, the wind, the fire of conquered country, crown and throne. Why can't I cross this river? Pay no mind to the battles you
show you a patent that I found that's going to explain what you're watching on this FAA.gov camera. This is the http://abc.ams.faa.gov. This is a government camera. Watch this. Keep watching, and I'm going to show you the patent for it afterwards. And I'll show you the patent, and also, I put it up on my backup channel last night, a shorter version. I instantly got a copyright strike, and they instantly banned it worldwide. See that right there? You see that? You see that? See the sun up here? See this one falling away? We've never seen that before. We watch these cameras all the time. You seen that? The sun is right up here. This is another reflector or something to that effect, being pushed out of the way or whatever. Not exactly sure, but it's not real. It's not natural. That bright white hot sun. Now look at these right here. These are not natural rays. These are not natural camera lens flares. You know what I mean? This is from a man-made source right there. Okay? You catching me? You follow me? I'm going to put the patent up. You're going to freak out. This says it's a system and method for irradiation of planet surfaces. One claim, 10 drawing figures. It says reflector, satellite, 22,400 miles, intensity of illumination on Earth. Spot in lumens /foot times 10. Patented 24-hour orbit, ISO 6-hour orbit, diameter of illuminated Earth, spot in miles, 5, 10, 50. Alright, I'm going to let you read all this, but read it all and save this video in case they pull it. I'm not being over dramatic or anything to that effect. Notice that this map that they're showing is Baltimore, Harrisburg, Scranton, Philadelphia, so on and so forth. They show the distance and how much, you know, this is all the scientific stuff. You see what I'm saying? Crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. Intensity of illumination of area D, reflector, illuminated areas, blah, blah, blah. Intensity of solar radiation, lumen foots. Thus, for any given planar reflector 20 satellite, as the orbital altitude is decreased, the size of the reflector illuminated area 24 of the Earth's surface is decreased and the intensity of the illumination is increased. To gain a physical understanding of the potential lighting area effect on a circular plane, reflector 20 satellite, 1,000 feet in diameter, is in a synchronous orbit. I'll leave the rest of this for you to read. This is what everybody's been talking about for the last couple of weeks. This thing has showed up on the SETI telescope, the Stereo Solar Telescope. You see this thing? That right there is an exact side view of the sun simulator patent that I put up in March. It's the exact same thing. That shows it right there. Clear as a bell. See this? This is the patent that I put up a long time ago. You see that right there? Here they are one more time. Baltimore, Philadelphia. Shows the patents. It explains that would be some sort of a, I think this right here is exactly what we saw in the, you see this thing? Yep.
It is so different now, and it's not even a natural shape anymore. Like today, it looks like towards the end of the video, it looks like a perfect square. Wait till you see this shit. This is probably one of the best sunrises I've got in a long time. You guys gotta check this out. Look at this. Look at this. That's not the most amazing sunrise you've ever seen. Look at the blue. Look at the size of the lens array. You can see the sun simulator poking out of the side of the left. See it bulging out of the side of the left? That's the sun simulator. The big circle thing that makes the sun look like it's 12 times its normal size, that's the lens array. It's basically like a camouflage. So everything behind it can hide and make it all look like just one big warm glow, one big warm sun. But there's a lot going on behind there. As you can see, I had that little, at the right angle, caught that blue sphere. That's not a camera effect. It's not. I can show you plenty other videos where that black center is a camera effect. And I can show you plenty of videos where it's not. So, I don't care who tries to debunk this shit. Those people work for the leaders. Peep trolls that get on these videos and have nothing to do but try to debunk what we're talking about is because they work for, alphabet agencies, trying to make you look bad, trying to discredit you, so no one listens and no one gets on your bandwagon. Look at this. Look at the shape of this. That is so unnatural. Watch as we get a little further into the video. Watch the shape of this thing. This thing, it changes shape while I'm videotaping it. Meaning they're adjusting it. It just rose. It's only been in the air for about 20 minutes. So every time it makes landfall over the oceans, they don't care over the oceans. There's not many people seeing it. But as it makes landfall, they have to do adjustments. Look at this shit. This is just crazy. Look at it. It's slowly changing from like an octagon shape to a square. And it will. Watch. Well, a square on its edge. So it'll look like a diamond. But it's going to be 4 sides. Watch. But watch this thing, man. This is, look how natural. See, everything underneath the horizon looks like real land. Even the sky above it looks like normal sky. But it's just that one section of the horizon where the sun simulator is, and it just all looks fake. That looks like CGI, man. And this is live video. I shot this morning. Isn't this crazy looking? Look at this. Look at this. If that is not a simulated light source, I don't know what is. Look at the center of it now. It's still blue, but it looks, because of the angle I'm at a really high altitude. You're seeing like a spinning. I'm at a loss for words. This is crazy to look at. And look, you can see off to the left how like the simulator isn't lined up completely with the lens array. You see it bulging off to the left? Almost like the, you see it? See it?
Bob, I just put a link in the chat right here. If you go to that link, I was looking here the other day, and I actually went there to get a video I've seen before, and I noticed something new. I said, wait a second, why does this site show a different site thing on the right? And I said, oh my goodness, they added January through March of 2016, April through June 2016. And I said, okay, now they've definitely faked it. If you click on one of those, Bob, go to January through March 2016, and then press play. They did the same thing again. And that's ridiculous. If even at this point, they still are not going to show shadows doing a 360. You'll see that the shadow goes around halfway and then clicks over in there. They still can't even show the sun doing a 360. So, unless this is a psyop or something, I don't understand why they would even put this out, because it's a joke. It's an absolute joke that you tell us there's a 24-hour sun that goes around, and this is the South Pole. This isn't Mawson Station. This isn't, somewhere else. This isn't Ross. This is, Munson Scott at the 90-degree mark, and they can't even show it. It just, they cut the film. And if you watch the time, look at the time up top. It's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 5. 6.
Jeez.
So what the hell are they doing? So it's just pathetic.
Yeah. And all this is because they were trying to save bandwidth. I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it should be tropical down there, honestly. In a globe Earth scenario, that place should be freaking tropical.
Yeah, it's got the sun just beating on it. It's angled right at the sun, and it's 375 Earth diameters closer to the sun than it is for our summer. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's absolutely no excuse for that. That is ridiculous. And so again,
gonna plant some palm trees and work on my tan. You got any lip balm?
And wouldn't you think that they would rather put up, don't they realize that it would be better to put up 1 month of full footage of the sun actually doing the, I mean, do we really need to see 3 months of half footage? Who the hell wants to see that? Like, that's not showing us anything. Who comes here to look at their webcam footage to see you cut the day in half every time? It doesn't even make any sense.
Well, they're counting on people not looking at the time and date up at the top. They're simply saying, "Oh yeah, well, I'll be darned. There, it looks like it's daylight all day long."
So, one of the weird things I noticed was, first, this flight goes from Cape Town, South Africa, down to Witchaway Camp. You'll see down here it says flight to Antarctica 5.5 hours. Then I thought what was weird is down here it says flight to Emperor Penguins 2.5 hours. Okay, that's this little excursion here. But it says flight to South Pole 7 hours each way. So that's interesting that this flight here, 7 hours each way, this flight here is 5.5 hours. Just interesting. But as we get down here, so I just thought this was interesting here. It's talking about during the 5.5 hour flight, the African night turns to day as we soar over thousands of icebergs and pass into 24 hours of continuous sunshine. So it's just interesting that they don't say, circling sun, 24 hours of sun, it's sunshine. Well, the coffee cup caustic would cause that kind of an atmospheric effect. This here is interesting. Doesn't really look much like the sun. But this is your digs for $80,000 a person. It's pretty gnarly. I guess you get to go see these penguins. So now you can check out this site if you want. It is white-desert.com. They look legit. I can't tell. I've not ordered any. I don't know who's paying that kind of money to go on these trips. But there was something else I was going to show in this, or I don't remember. This is the itinerary. Thought there was something else I wanted to show. Nope, not that. Nope, nothing I can remember here. Please bear in mind, altitude sickness. Nope. Yeah, so this anyway, $80,000 a person. What a total joke. And this just does mention that flight extra time that I was talking about, because it talks about, even though it says we stop for 1 hour to refuel and then continue another 2 hours, well, they say here the first part of the journey is a 5-hour flight to refueling stop. So it does fly 5 hours, stop, and then fly 2 more for a total of 7, when the flight, which is much longer, maybe we can check that out real quick. I didn't do that, so let me see. If we go to Google Earth, let's just check that out real quick on the fly. So if we are going from Cape Town, and we're going to be, where's Cape Town? Right there. So they're going to fly to, I didn't really see where they were going, like here-ish. Let me go check that real quick. That map was up here. Okay, so about there. So, and then, so I got 2,500 miles, and then they've got, let's clear that, 2,500 miles, but then from here to the South Pole, 1,300 miles. So you're talking about 1,200 miles further, but you're getting this distance done in 5.5 hours, but you're getting this distance done in 7. I don't know, just seems very interesting, something to look at. And then it showed a 2.5 hour flight, basically going from here to here, which we've got about 668 miles. So just interesting.
And it also works on a flat Earth. What is interesting on the flat model, however, is that the same is true, but the southern hemisphere is much larger. Not the same as its northern counterpart. So, if the Earth was flat, there would be signs to show us that the flat model better represented reality. Like in the southern summer. In a heliocentric world, the sun is 3 million miles closer during the southern summer than it is during the northern summer. So, most, if not all, of the Earth's highest temperatures would be in the south. However, that's not the case. In fact, 14 of 15 of the highest temperatures are in the north. Well, if you look carefully, that actually works on a flat model much better. The flat model would also call for a much colder and harsh environment in the south. The globe calls for 70 degrees south and 70 degrees north to be really identical, yet they are completely and vastly different. And the flat model would also show a larger than currently understood southern sea. You can see here that the southern hemisphere is much larger. Now, does this match our observations, or does the globe? Go to any flight tracker and watch southern flights, and as soon as they are 200 miles offshore, poof, they're gone. You won't see them again until they're within 200 miles from another landmass. So with a larger than expected southern hemisphere, we should expect to see some evidence that the distance traveled below the equator is a lot larger than the globe predicts. So let's have a look. So taking a look at this image and the green line, you should be able to see that the circumnavigation east-west should be less than 25,000 miles. Granted, there could be some added miles here or there, so let's say 35,000 at the most. So let's begin with Magellan. And of course he died and his logs are lost, and of course even the backup logs are no longer in existence. The closest we have is Antonio Pigafetta's account and a logbook by Francisco Albo. Now, in his very own log, Pigafetta points out that the circumference of Earth is 6,300 leagues. Then he says that a league is 4 miles. So 6,300 times 4 is 25,200. That's within a few hundred of the current measurement of 24,901. Now, I'm sure you've heard people say that Eratosthenes discovered the circumference of the Earth back in 250 BC. He was a very smart man, they say. Take yourself back 2,000 years, 2,500 years, and look at these pictures and tell me how smart of a man he would have had to be to come to the conclusion that the sun rays are parallel. I don't think there's any possible way that anybody would come to that conclusion in 250 BC. Now, it is difficult to know what has been rewritten and what hasn't in some of these logs, but let's read this entry from the Pigafetta journal. It says, "The earth is round," he says, "and remains suspended and immovable in the midst of all celestial bodies. The first index fixed the 2 poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic, which are supposed to correspond with the poles of the earth. It is supposed that all the circumference of the earth is divided into 360 degrees, and each degree is 17 leagues and a half. Consequently, the entire circumference of the earth is 6,300 leagues." So somehow in 1525 they knew where Antarctica and the Arctic were, the North and the South Pole. 1525?
This is crazy!
Yeah, I'd say that. Let's move on. So we've got here, how many miles did Ferdinand Magellan travel? And it says he traveled 14,460 leagues, which they equate here to 43,400 miles. So we look a little bit further and see another article here that also says the same thing, that they had run more than 14,460 leagues. The next document here as well says the same number yet again, 14,460 Spanish leagues. It lists that as 37,560 miles. So far we've been told 37,560, we've been told 43,400, but if we just look at Pigafetta's own writing, where he says that land leagues are of 3 miles and sea leagues are of 4 miles. So that gives us 1460 times 4 is 57,840 miles. Yet we've seen other articles try and tell us 37, 47. It's actually 57,000 miles. Now when you look at the logbooks of Captain Cook, his logbook for his second journey was also 60,000 plus miles. You could look at the British Challenger expedition in the 1800s. That was also over 60,000 miles. So we should start being able to recognize a pattern here, that obviously when we circumnavigate south of the equator, we are logging way too many miles. Remember that they're at the bottom of the globe. So if the equator is 25,000 miles, how are Captain Cook, Magellan, and others doing 50 to 65,000 miles, which is more than double? And of course, the key here is the circumnavigation. But not east-west. Let's look at north-south. So on a globe, we know how easy it would be to simply do a north-south circumnavigation going over both poles. It should be as easy as going east-west. So we either will have a ton of north-south circumnavigations, or we will have a few weird stories and trips and maybe some failed attempts, because on a flat earth map, north-south circumnavigation is impossible. So again, if we live on a globe, we should be seeing a lot of north-south navigations, circumnavigations, and if we live on a flat earth, we would see a lot of things like this picture shows. Imagine you start at that white dot there somewhere on the east coast of the United States and travel down to the tip of South America. You would then travel from there out to wherever the 90-degree marker was, and you'd have to turn around and come back. You see that line coming right back to the Mexico area, and then up to the North Pole, and then ending back where you started. All right, so should we expect to see no claims for north-south navigation? Well, remember, it is a deception. So we're going to have to dig a bit deeper. They don't just hand you the truth. They are happy to teach you lies in public schools and show you propaganda and TV and newspapers. But for truth, we're going to have to actually step out of our comfort zone. So let's look at some recent claims. First, we have the Guinness record holder and the Guinness Greatest Living Explorer, Sir Ranulph Fiennes. He goes by the name of Ran. One of the things he did was a 3-year trip to circumnavigate the Earth north-south. And are we dealing with some just regular guy? Or are we dealing with Sir Ranulph Twistleton Wexara Fiennes, the 3rd Baronet OBE? He was in the British Army for 8 years. He inherited his father's baronetcy, whatever the hell that means. Some ridiculous nonsense, I'm sure. He's also cousins to Queen Elizabeth. So you don't have to look too far to see what kind of guy we are dealing with here. And a recent Telegraph article tells us that Sir Ranulph was in court recently because he was accused by Natalie Harrison of faking injuries to make his expedition seem more risky and exciting. And Natalie, she actually got hurt the second time she fell into a crevice on purpose. And you see him here with a ladder. I don't know who's carrying that for him while he's on these little journeys. But, oh, by the way, since Harrison agreed to go along with the 2 fake stunts, she got 0. In fact, she was ordered to pay Sir Ranulph Fakes-A-Lot $50,000 to pay for his lawyer fees, because the judge actually said that it was her choice to go ahead and agree with his idea of faking accidents. He is, of course, a Freemason, a member of the Belvedere Lodge number 503. Of course, it runs in the family. But now let's take a look at this 1979 to 1982 Trans-Globe Expedition, the North-South Pole Circumnavigation. Yeah, right.
No one has ever done that! No one has ever done that in the history of Dota!
So let's take a look if there's any discrepancies that might lead us to believe that maybe this is some, I don't know, horseshit. It looks like 52,000 miles, it says here, in total was covered during this Trans-Globe Expedition. Again, north-south navigation, 25,000 mile circumference, yet 52,000 mile trip. And we can note that it says it was such a huge challenge, no one has ever repeated the route. So now let's look at the Guinness Book of Fakery. According to this, we've got 35,000 miles. Okay, well, that's a little different. And this is the Guinness Book of World Records page. This is the Trans-Globe ship that actually he used to travel up and down the globe, I guess. They also had an interesting apparatus here. This is the Trans-Globe Expedition, the plane. So even though they're supposed to be doing surface navigation, who knows what they actually did. Let's see here. This is the actual homepage for Sir Ran, the expedition. Oh, now it's a 100,000 mile route.
You lie to me, you make an excuse!
So they've now jumped from 35 to 52 to 100,000 miles, all talking about the exact same trip. I mean, the question is, how can you be off by 70,000 miles? That's like 3 times around the globe. Can we not figure out how many miles we went on a trip? It's not that hard. Oh boy. Here we have another page that also claims that it was 100,000 miles, which is just ridiculous. Why would it ever take somebody 4 times the distance of the circumference of the Earth to go the circumference of the Earth? I mean, does he forget his car keys and have to go back home? He was at the North Pole, he had to go all the way to the South Pole, then come all the way back and then do that twice? Doesn't make any sense. I can't take it. So now we're looking at a little PDF flyer they had from around that time that says Around the World the Long Hard Way, which if it's 25,000 miles and you're going 100,000 miles, then you definitely went the long hard way. And just reading in here, you'll see that there's all kinds of things going on. People are dropping off snowmobiles, picking up food, taking planes over here, boats over here. There's people all over the place. Whole thing is a disaster. Oh, did I mention it's also a lie? One interesting thing I did find in this article that it says that there are only 5 pages in Rand's book about the time that he was at the South Pole, and there are no photos. So whenever you're doing a cross Antarctica expedition where you have to go through the South Pole, it's definitely good to take no pictures at the South Pole. That's the way to verify exactly what you say you did. Speaking of Antarctica, there was another interesting thing I found, that when you apply to go down there for whatever reason, take pictures, to go work as a scientist or whatever, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. If you guys know what that's like, it's like somebody's giving you secrets about a certain product or a new TV show, and you're not allowed to say anything. So what's going on down in Antarctica that you might see while you're down there that you're not allowed to say anything, besides Sir Richard Fakes-A-Lot faking another expedition? Now let's talk about some other people who have also gone north-south circumnavigation and see if they match the flat model or the globe model. This is the owner of the current record for a single plane being flown north-south pole circumnavigation. You can look up ZQ Pilot. Let's take a look at his path. You'll see here the white path was the intended path. The red path is his actual path. So he went down to the tip of South America, bounced out to the 90-degree marker, and then turned around and went right back where he came from, then jumped from South America all the way to Australia, Australia to Hawaii, to California, to Alaska, to the North Pole, back home to North Carolina, and he has the record for circumnavigation. Did he circumnavigate? I don't think so, Tim. All right, now we're looking at a helicopter named Polar First as they attempted their record-setting helicopter flight pole-to-pole circumnavigation on December 5th, 2006, but they got down to the South Pole and crashed their helicopter. So in 2007, they attempted it again, and this time they did it according to the rules and regulations, not according to me, because what they did is went down to the South Pole, touched the 90-degree marker, and it says here they retraced their steps north with a stop at their 2003 crash site. They then crossed to the Drake and then to Ushuaia. Then they continued through South America. Then they went up the west coast of the U.S. with stops in Alaska and Canada, reaching the North Pole on 20th of April via Eureka, and from there they headed south, retracing the northern part of the route, and then hitting the east coast, Montreal, then New York. So if you can't see what's going on here, we have basically no circumnavigations north-south. The ones that we do have are like liners, or I don't know if you remember in gym having to do suicides or whatever they were called. That's basically what they're doing. They're running to the pole, touching it, and coming right back. That is not circumnavigation. It makes no sense on a globe. Do we only fly planes to London and then they have to come right back? They're not allowed to go past that? Of course not, right? Hopefully you're starting to see the writing on the ball, which says, "I'm fake. I'm a joke." Speaking of jokes, now we get to watch a little portion of the film that was taken of Sir Ranulf and his partner, Charlie Burton, as they become the first ever to do the north-south circumnavigation via the surface. Let's watch what I'm sure will be a captivating film.
The two-man team was unsafe.
So we said goodbye to our friends on board, and we wouldn't see them again for over a year. The trip ahead we knew would be very difficult indeed. We set out in two 12-foot open rubber boats, but quite quickly, going up the Yukon for 1,000 miles, we realized that they would not be up to the icy hazards and the storms of the Northwest Passage, which lay ahead.
Now, I'm not claiming to be smart here or anything, but who's filming this? Who is filming this scene?
What do you think it is, Judge? I think it's just flux. I can't really tell. Breakdowns had become commonplace.
So we had to have some other form of craft. So we got on by Morse code to Jenny to try and get us a Boston whaler, which would be fiberglass and tough enough for the ice and the storms ahead.
So just like that, you just basically snap your fingers and you get a replacement boat. That's really cool. So now they're driving the replacement boat that came out of thin air.
We had storms, we had whiteouts.
Oh, here they are struggling through the ice pack. It's going to be tough to get through there. How is the person filming it? Who is this dog? Why is the dog there? Where was the dog a second ago? And how did the person get through? Who's taping this? Who is this person? Did they already get... Who is taping them from the shore already? I thought they're just getting there. This is a movie. This is not real.
We then had to trek over the unmapped mountains of Ellesmere Island. And that is when I really realized the true courage of Charlie.
I mean, come on, for real. Why is this cameraman doing just fine? This is so fake. These guys are acting like they're dying, but the cameraman, he's just fine. It's easy to carry camera through the mountains.
I cracked my head open. I realized that there was a possibility of doing ourselves a considerable bit of damage. I've been drilling this part for about 6 years now. Ever since I knew we had to walk up Ellesmere Land. My feet, in fact my legs, are not the strongest. For the simple reason that I've damaged them too often over 38 years. I was scared.
I mean, look how far ahead the cameraman is. These guys are taking too long. This guy's getting a running head start or something. Now, pay attention here when he looks at the tent. You got the cameraman, you've got one of the explorers, you got the other one near the tent. Then watch the left side of the tent on the bottom. Did you see that? That guy's already got company.
They have come 150 miles so far. Between them and the pole, 350 more. But with detours, perhaps 500.
Does anybody know where they got these snowmobiles from? Is that what they were carrying on their backs? Do they have snowmobile rental shops up near the North Pole? I'm confused. And these guys are just mowing through. Cameraman's already in front of them. So who brought him in front of them and then went back? Here comes this guy. Woo! Okay. Now it's over. Can't get any faker than that. I mean, look at this nonsense again. Oh yeah, that was on accident. Go ahead and jump in the river there. This just in, one of the actors pretending to do a polar expedition have faken fallen into a river, causing hours of backup on their North Pole trip.
He puts Transglobe in the headlines.
A docu-fictional piece.
They're now 340 miles from the North Pole.
By the time we eventually got near to the North Pole, we were definitely getting a bit weird.
They're fatigued and peculiarly lightheaded.
Now, maybe it's just me, but I would ask the cameraman, excuse me, sir, how are your feet not being frozen like mine? How are you able to get through this just fine, but I'm acting like I'm dying over here? I'm pretty sure whatever shoes you're wearing are what I should be wearing so that I have feeling in my feet like you clearly do. You don't seem to be bothered by any of this. Oh, sweet. I'm so happy they had the speedy oil change and tune-up up here so I was able to get my wrecked snowmobile fixed. And, oh, I just go over 4-foot gaps too, like they're nothing. With the cameraman standing right there filming it perfectly. It's crazy how crazy these north-south circumnavigations can get. You just never know what surprises around the corner. Sometimes you get a new boat, sometimes you get snowmobiles, sometimes you have a regular phone to use. Sometimes the cameraman pans like it's a cinematic scene. It's all very impressive.
But we're here. Only a jumble of fractured ice marks the top of the world. And within a few days, the Union Jack will have drifted miles away with the ever-moving flow. While the moment may be transitory, its meaning is not. Rand Fiennes and Charlie Burton have become the first men ever to reach both poles the hard way.
So we got two guys in the record books. What about the cameraman? He doesn't count? Chump change? Alright, they finally made it. They left the snowmobiles, I don't know, back there somewhere. They don't need them anymore. They made it. They've done it. First ones ever. Unbelievable.
I don't think nature is comprised solely.
No, I meant that. Like, this bullshit is unbelievable. Oh, and look who's there with him. Prince Charles. Ain't that cute. Way to go, guys. You're awesome. And if you believe that, then I've got an island off the coast of Colorado I need to sell you. So, hit me up. Now, let's just pretend that sometimes people circumnavigate north-south, like 5 people a year. Even though we just saw 2 guys fake it, and they're the only ones to ever do it, let's pretend that there's 5 a year. And there's about 8 million people that fly a day, or 3.1 billion a year. So if only 5 circumnavigated north-south per year, that would be 0.00000000016%. Now, does that sound like a number that leans towards the side of definitely possible and equally possible in comparison to east-west circumnavigation? Or does it look like a number that screams impossible? This does not happen. From that, you should be able to formulate kind of an idea whether we're living on a big giant ball or not. Okay, coming up we have our little moment of Zen. First, this image from the International Space Station. I mean, words can't even describe. Look at this. Unbelievable. I mean, honestly, I wish I was kidding. Space station. All right, so now what we're going to wait for is 2 pictures. This one first, then we're going to look at another one, and then we're going to put them together, and then we're going to think it out, talk it out, and then I'll be done. So this is the first one, and here is the second. Hopefully you can see where this is going. Mind you, both these are NASA images, and now we will put them side by side. All right. Deep breath, let it out. Look at these 2 images of where you supposedly live, and let's talk about it. Globe believers want to tell flat earthers that their map is wrong because Australia is distorted. Take a look here, folks. Whatever your excuse might be for what we see in front of us, it should come with the realization that these images are fake. Well, one of them is fake for sure, right? So if only one is fake, does that mean that they fake it sometimes? Do they fake the ISS sometimes? So come on, globe believers, and those that hate my guts. You're either a thinking, questioning, rational-minded human being who recognizes deceit when it's right in front of you, owns it when you've been had, and does what it takes to help correct the lie and to expose the liars. Or you're a parrot for a slave system. A slave system that has stolen your life, your purpose, your importance, and your mind. And it's just sad because you're going to fight for them. You must love the system. You must love your slavery. Well, I don't. So if you can't speak out against them, well, you better warn them that we're coming. And they've got a lot to prove. They taught us a lot and taught us the scientific method. And now that we're trying to test these so-called facts, we aren't reproducing the same results. So if we're all just idiots, if science is right, then show us. Test it. Show us the proof. What part of the scientific method says that people should stop others from doing their own independent tests and experiments? All that we're asking is for you to show us. Show us the measurable curvature. Show us something. So the choice is yours. Research and test, or type "you're a moron" again into the comments and feel good about yourself. I'll tell you one thing, it won't change the fact that we've all been lied to. It will only prolong the inevitable. And that's nobody's going to space. There's no rover on Mars. Stars are stars and the sun is the sun. Or you can continue to preach your gospel and tell us all how true and good it is. A reading from the second letter of Neil deGrasse to the theoretical physicists. I mean, look at these 2 pictures. All of you who want to tell me I'm an idiot for not trusting NASA, look at the screen. Are you really going to make up an excuse for them yet again? Really? To us, we can't seem to find how all of these globe facts were put through any kind of scientific method. So if you do, if we've missed it, Can you do the tests? Can you show us how? Because science is starting to look pretty bad right now. And where are these inquisitive scientists I'm told about? The ones that are just dying for new discoveries. We're making new discoveries. We're proving that boats don't go over the horizon. Something that people haven't known for 500 years. But we can't find any of these scientists that supposedly are all about debunking the current beliefs. Do they exist? Or is it just that all that was merely words? So I'm going to show you some different things about Antarctica, so hopefully you see the difference between good research and just typing something into YouTube and saying, oh, there's the proof. Anybody can go to Antarctica because these people say they've been there. Let's move on and get into these cruises into Antarctica. First of all, you can see on the screen here that they all go to these ports only. So you'll see that that is a very small section of a gigantic continent where people would all assemble and all the little cruise ports would be there. So that's very interesting. And a lot of people like me have been working very hard to figure out what is going on in Antarctica. And so what I did was I wanted to go ahead and look into booking myself a little cruise.
But what they don't do is patrol the entire Antarctica because anybody can go there. And what I find utterly stupid is the fact that there's literally tens of thousands of people moving over Antarctica every single week.
So the first thing I will do is show you why not everyone can go there. And the second thing is I don't usually call people liars, so I'm just going to ask for your evidence in claiming that tens of thousands of people fly across Antarctica every week. That's what you said. So show me the proof of flying across Antarctica. If you look up any flight charts, they don't fly across the continent at all. So show your evidence on that one. On the screen now, you'll see why not everyone can go to Antarctica. Because not everyone has between $40,000 and $75,000 for a 5 or 6 day trip. So I'm on this site. It's called polarcruises.com. I'm looking at all their little deals, and it looks like a scam to me because you don't need that kind of money for a trip to Antarctica. So anybody charging you $45,000 to $75,000 for a 5 day trip where you're staying in a tent and peeing in a bucket, there's a problem there. So I also looked up and tried to find out how many people fit on one of these planes, and they usually have 66 people on the plane. And if you multiply that by the ticket price of $40,000, you get about $3 million. So this is where I start to smell scam. To make that kind of money is not necessary on upcharging that much. So the first thing I did was run the site through Whoisology. Really cool site if you're looking for the owner of a site or IP information, registrar information. And when I found it, I got some other interesting news. He owns over 150 other related domains besides polarcruises.com. In fact, look at all these. This travel agency or scam center have all the Antarctic and Arctic trips in their hands. You must go through them. So that was just more fuel to my fire. Sites like penguincruise.com, Antarctica Cruise, Antarctica Tour, Antarctica Trip, Polar Bear Cruises, Antarctic Voyage, Antarctic Journey, Antarctica Journeys, Arctic Voyages, Antarctic Tour, Antarctic Vacations with a hyphen, Antarctic Trip, Antarctic Adventures, Antarctica Cruise. So, as you can see, he definitely has the corner on the market. Next up was to find out, are they even in business, or is it an all-out scam? Now, I hope you are ready for this story to get a little bit juicy. Thanks for holding on so far, because it's about to get real interesting. So, in looking at the page here that lists the employees, I'd already looked up Jim, couldn't find anything. He's the one who owns all the domains. I looked up Sharon, couldn't find much. Again, both Jim and Sharon have very non-unique names. But Chuck and his wife, Lynn, were easy to find. Here you're looking at Chuck Cross. He is a Antarctic polar expedition leader, so it says. So is his wife. but they only have one photo of themselves all online. So, I mean, if you can search Google, I did here in a second, you'll see it on the screen. And that even putting her name and Bend, Oregon, where they supposedly live, turns up just that one photo and only articles that look like they come from their site or in regards to them being travel agents. You can see here, just that one picture up at the top. So that left me with one other person. And I looked her up, and I always thank my lucky stars when I see somebody with a unique name. They're usually easy to find online. Her name is Nina Spinrad. So here it talks about her being an outdoor lover. And so I began to search Spinrad, Nina, and I get a ton of results for a Dr. Richard W. Spinrad. Who is he? Well, he was named in 2014 as the NOAA Chief Scientist by Barack Obama. Then I see Mr. Spinrad was the president of research at Oregon State before his appointment as head of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Research Center. And, of course, we know that this travel agency is based in Oregon. So, prior to that, he was the research director for the U.S. Navy. He also is part of the global warming lie, as he is a direct and permanent representative to the United Nations Intercontinental Oceanographic Commission. He has been given awards from Bush and Obama, and now there's no way that this Nina is related to him, right? So I found a obituary for a Gene Thompson, and if you're ever looking for relationships, the best place to go is obituary, since it spells it right out for you. And in Gene Thompson's obituary, he was survived by his daughter Elena and her husband Dr. Richard Spinrad, and their son Gary and his wife Nina Spinrad. So for those of you following along, we now have one company who owns all the domains for Arctic and Antarctic trips. It has 5 employees. One of them is the daughter-in-law of the head honcho and President Barack Obama's selection for chief scientist for the NOAA. So that means we have a Navy veteran, a military man who has taken a military oath in charge of the ocean as chief scientist, just like all of our scientists who went to the moon, who are on the ISS or are currently or former military. Worth noting, if you spend 10, 20, 30 years in the military and then you get honorable discharge or you leave or retire, you're then considered a civilian. So if you become an astronaut, you are a civilian astronaut. So when we look closely, we can see that honestly, most of what we think of as science has been militarized. Also wanted to point out, if you look at the screen now, you'll see I did some flight tracking. And I don't see any planes that are going anywhere near the Antarctic landmass, which really only makes sense when you think of Antarctica being the ring around the flat plane. If it were a giant continent on the bottom of a globe, why wouldn't we be crossing it to go from Australia to South America, etc.?
And flat earthers just don't seem to know about this. And they think that Antarctica doesn't exist and that it's a military manned base and they don't allow anybody in there. Well, anybody can go to Antarctica. And the one good thing that's come out of me investigating this is the fact that it's exposed a lot of these flat earth liars, and they don't go out there patrolling all round Antarctica. That's just stupid. And the most stupid thing of all is that some of these flat earthers think that Antarctica doesn't exist. So
I wanted to talk a quick minute about GPS, and sorry for my scribbles, but hopefully this will help you understand a little better. If the map on the left was the correct map, and we needed people to think that they are on a globe, then you would put ground-based tracking everywhere. So let's call that those red sticks on the map on the left. Then when someone stands, say, at the 3 dots in South America, then it would coincide with our GPS, or global positioning system, which would be the 3 dots on the right. We could just say that those 3 dots were being tracked by big metal satellites orbiting above your head, when in actuality they were ground-based stations. Now, if someone thinks that they are going from, say, South America to Antarctica, on the right, they would actually be just doing the same thing as we see on the left. Same thing with Australia. Going from Australia to the South Pole would look the same way on the left as on the right. And as people fly around the world, the GPS simply tells them where they're going. So even though you're just doing a big circle, the GPS makes you think you're on a globe. So I did find some flights that leave Australia, head down, and they say they cross the South Pole, turn around, and return. So from the 3 places in Australia where these planes leave, all would take 12 hours according to the site, but all distances are 8,000 miles plus. If they were truly going to the 90-degree mark at the South Pole,
Well, 8,000 miles in 12 hours is 666 miles per hour, and the top speed of a 747 jet is 550 miles per hour. So this means you simply do not actually go to the 90-degree mark. Also, the plane has 366 seats with an average price of about $3,000. So $3,000 times 366 is well over $1 million. The plane uses 36,000 gallons per 10 hours of flight, so I'll even give them 60,000 gallons for their 12-hour flight, charging $2.50 a gallon, and that's the price of gas in California. That's $150,000. So off $1 million take, they spend $150,000 on gas. Pretty nice profit to fly in a circle. So, as you can see, problems with the globe are becoming too much for people to even ignore. Let's look back at the midnight sun now. This is a big issue. Based on current cosmology, if the Earth is a ball, then the North Pole and the South Pole have to be the complete same but opposite, when one is facing the sun versus when the other is facing the sun. For example, Norway gets all-day sun from April through August, and that's 400 miles from the 60-degree marker north. Well, if that's true, then if the Earth is a ball, the same areas opposite must be getting the same no sun in the south on the same days. Well, webcams will clearly show that it is quite a bit different in Antarctica than it is in the north. For instance, the north may get all-day sun, while the south is still getting a little bit of sun when they should be getting nothing but darkness. I'll show some webcams to prove this point. So the first question you might ask is, of course, well, what is the midnight sun and where can we see it? And if we take a look at the answers we get from Yahoo's Answers.com, which I'm sure has nothing but the truth, right? It says, what months is Antarctica in total darkness? And they answer, oh, Antarctica is in total darkness all of September, October, November, December, January, February, and most of March. Well, this person didn't realize that that is the summer for the South, and they're not in all darkness for those months. It's ridiculous. So we'll look a little bit lower where we get NASA's answer. We know NASA never lies to us. NASA says that Antarctica has 6 months of darkness and 6 months of summer, and that the sun only rises and sets one time a year. That is complete and total bullshit. We'll see that in webcam footage in a minute. You'll see a little bit lower than their post is a post about the myth of the midnight sun, because it's a myth. That's exactly why, and I've said this many times, if somebody's lying to you, there's a reason, right? So we're lied to as kids about the polar sun or the midnight sun in the south and the midnight sun in the north. If it's a lie, there's a reason behind it. Wouldn't you agree? Now you'll see here there's a letter from somebody who works down at the Antarctic, and she's explaining when she gets to see the sun, and she says, of course, the same thing, that she sees 6 months of sun and 6 months of darkness. Simply not true. We'll look at webcam footage which proves it. And she even says at the end, do you know why we get this? Well, it's because the Earth goes around the sun in 365 days. That completes a year.
Hey folks, this is Odin. Today I want to cover Captain Cook. Captain Cook is a very famous captain, and the reason behind that is because he served his country quite well. He was married for 16 years, for example, but only 4 out of those 16 years did he spend at home with his wife. The remainder of the years he spent out at sea, navigating the southern hemisphere and some of the northern hemisphere in his last journey. But his real claim to fame was because he found new land for England, and to this day they still claim that land that he discovered. Let's begin our journey with covering him. He's also credited for circumnavigating Antarctica. In fact, he's credited for being the first captain to do so. One thing not many people know about is NASA named some of their space shuttles after Captain Cook's ships. Cook explored and mapped more territory than any navigator of his era, and his achievements later saw him honored by NASA. So his ship Discovery was one of several historical vessels that inspired the name of the third space shuttle, and NASA later named their final shuttle Endurance, which of course was named after one of Captain Cook's ships as well. But let's talk about his journeys. Really his first and second journey, but we'll also cover his third journey a little later. Here's a picture of one of his ships. These are the type of ships that he used when he was exploring. And here is a map of his first journey. The journey's always begun here. Came around, took a break down here, and restocked for supplies by Cape Horn. Now, this is his first journey. So, he left home, he went to Cape Horn, and then he kind of was out to sea right here. What they was looking for is something that at that time they called the Great Southern Continent. At that time they believed the Northern Hemisphere had all this land up here, so they believed that there was a huge continent in the Southern Hemisphere also, something that laid undiscovered. So on his first journey he came here and he was searching for that continent, and he discovered New Zealand, which he did claim for the crown at that time. Then when he left the area of New Zealand, he discovered Australia, and he went up the coastline of Australia here, where he ran into trouble and hit one of those barrier reefs and knocked a hole in the ship, and he had to pull on shore of Australia and repair the ship. Now this was the only time that that happened to Captain Cook, where he had to dock his ship in such a manner. And then he later went on here to the islands, and he came down to South Africa, and he floated on back home. A journey this size took him 3 years. It was from 1768 to 1771. Ironically, when he left for his journey, the first journey, his wife gave birth, and the baby later died while he was out to sea, and he had no knowledge of this until he returned home. Now let's take a look at this same journey, but on a flat earth map. Now here is Captain James Cook's first voyage, but done on a flat earth map. I've done the best that I could with the tools that I have in marking it out. So he left his journey and went to the bottom by Cape Horn and restocked for supplies. Then he went on out into the Southern Hemisphere oceans, searching for the great continent that was believed to be in here. And he actually later came out and said there is no great southern continent. Then he discovered New Zealand, and he mapped it out. He was a great map maker, and he came around New Zealand and up the coast of Australia, where his ship got damaged and he had to fix it there, and back around to the bottom of South Africa, where he restocked again and came on back home. 3 years. And as you can see from this map, he was circumnavigating the ice rim But his second mission, he even came closer to the ice. We're going to get into that right now. When he arrived home, it was 1771. He basically stayed home for a year before he decided to go back out to sea and start his second mission, which is now on the screen. Again, he was searching for the great southern continent. He left home, and this time, instead of going to South America, he went to South Africa first. After leaving South Africa, he went further south, and he was experiencing a lot of ice and a lot of bad and cold weather. And this mission started in 1772. He only stayed 1 year at home. Cruised around the ice rim here, and he went back to New Zealand, a spot that he now claimed for the Queen, and he restocked. And after he restocked, again, he was doing his searching. Restocked. Search. Restock. Finally, with no luck of finding this continent, he started his journey, went to Cape Horn of Plenty, they called it. Then he went on back home. And this mission, like his last mission, lasted 3 years. So when he got back home, it was now 1775. These guys didn't mind going out to sea for many years, not knowing if they would ever come back. They were truly explorers of their day, and that's why they are remembered to this day. But they also are remembered because of the land they claimed for the Queen. New Zealand in this case, and Australia. And into this day, this land is still recognized and owned by the Queen. I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm going to show y'all what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's take a look at this map, but on a flat earth map. Okay, here's his journey mapped out on a flat earth map, where he leaves his home, goes to South Africa, comes around South Africa and he's riding the ice rim right here this whole time. Goes to New Zealand and restock. He explores around this area here, which he never finds the great continent that they were looking for, because there is no great continent, there is an ice rim. And he actually came clean and said that there was no great southern continent, there was an ice rim. Then he restocks in New Zealand, rides the ice rim again, heads on back to the Horn of Plenty, Cape Horn, restocks, comes back home. 3 years journey. 3 years it took him to go around this ice rim at that time, back in the 1700s. So I find it quite amazing. And this is good evidence that the earth is flat by him never reaching this continent. And they did see, they seen penguins, and you know, they seen all kind of ice, and but they just never really came clean or admitted that there was a continent. And he was a great map maker. He would have seen something like that, and he would have, if there was a continent down there, he would have mapped that continent out in a heartbeat and claimed it for the Queen. That was his job, and he was very thorough at doing his job. He wasn't just a run-of-the-mill captain. He was a great captain and a great map maker. One of the best of all time. Some of the maps that he mapped out is still used to this day. For example, the New Zealand map they still use his mapping when they're showing pictures of New Zealand. Now here's a great example of Captain Cook's map making. I'm going to leave a link to this video in the description box because it was really a great documentary. Now this is what they had gave him, the map they gave him of New Zealand. As you can see, it doesn't, right. That's his map right here.
Okay, here's what Cook produced 5 years later. Now this really is a map. Just look at this detail.
See the detail? He would have easily mapped Antarctica.
And when you put it up against a modern satellite image, you can see just how precise it is. So precise, in fact, it was still being used well.
It's probably still being used today because satellites, in my opinion, don't exist. It was just a little off right here, but who knows, maybe throughout the years something got messed up in this area. Something got messed up on his map. Maybe they didn't want it to add up perfectly. But I think Captain Cook, I think his map was pretty close to perfect for mapping this area. He was a great captain and a great map maker. Okay, now to this day, who governs New Zealand and who owns it? I know they feel like it's the people own it, or they have their own government, but in reality, the Queen owns it. Queen Elizabeth II is the country's head of state and is represented by a Governor General. Okay, Queen Elizabeth this day is ruler of New Zealand. Maybe ruler might not be the right word, but I promise you any kind of diamonds or gold or riches found in New Zealand, that's going to go to the crown. Sure, the people who's mining it might get some of it, but the bulk of it's going to go to her and her family, of course. And it's the same thing with Australia. She's a ruler of Australia, and all the riches of that country will go to her as well. So let's see. When the Queen visits Australia, she speaks and acts as the Queen of Australia and not as Queen of the United Kingdom. And I assure you, if Captain Cook had discovered a continent in the southern hemisphere, like the continent that we are believed or led to believe exists, called Antarctica, the Queen would own that continent. The only reason why they don't own America is because we had a revolutionary war against them at that time. But I assure you, if that continent did exist, it would be owned by the Queen. But the continent does not exist. It's an ice rim. And Captain Cook proved that. He proved it without even knowing it. Here are some of the details of his second voyage. And right here in the agenda, it was to search for the southern continent in the Pacific, and he searched for it, yet he did not find it. Why did he not find a southern continent is the question. I'm going to leave a link to this site as well, because it's very interesting and it's a great read. So in closing, I'm going to say that Captain Cook was a great explorer, and had he discovered if there was an Antarctic, a continent below. He would have claimed it for the crown. That was his job, and he would have been very proud to do his job. Hey guys, I have this book here. It's with Captain James Cook in the Atlantic and the Pacific. The Private Notes of James Burney. And he was the second lieutenant on the Adventure. And this was Captain Cook's second voyage, from 1772 to 1773. He was on the other ship, so to speak, and he was under Captain Tobias Furness. The book has some great art type work, and this artwork was done by an artist on Captain Cook's ship, and the artist's name was William Hodges. This is one painting by Hodges. And the book was published in 1975 by the National Library of Australia. It has some very interesting stuff about their journeys, in my opinion, around the ice rim. It also has some more artwork and illustrations in it. And it has this nice map here. And the map shows both of them, both ships, you know, on journeys, and where they got separated. They got separated here. As you can see though, this would be like the ice rim down at the bottom. When they got separated, Captain Cook went further down, further south by the Antarctic ice rim here. Where the other ship, the Adventure, they went on to New Zealand. And this guy was on that ship there, James Burney. So him and his captain and their crew, they didn't dip down as far as Captain Cook did. But they did dip down right here. They were together, both ships were together for this part of the journey. And when they got to New Zealand and Australia, they went back together. And that's where Burney and his crew, they went back. They went back to England. And Captain Cook and his crew, they stayed around this area and dipped down further, looking for a elusive continent that they never found. And it still hasn't been found. It's the ice rim that they found, or that they circumnavigated. Also, I wanted to add that the book is on a more of an expensive side. It can range from about $100 US to around $700 US. And if you're living in the US, it takes quite some time to get it to you. Simply because it's either going to be coming out of the UK or Australia. But this is a great way to do research, because you know that this book's been around since 1975 and it hasn't been really messed with. And it's also a first edition. First published in 1975, copyright 75. It has been kept in great shape also. It's the only thing that I found actually wrong with it was on the jacket itself. It had a little rip right here. But other than that, it's a beautiful book, and it's a piece of history right here. So the notes in here that this guy wrote are from his personal journal, and we know that this book hasn't been touched since 75, since this book was published in 75. So we're going to just take a look at it. Anyway, I'm going to read y'all a few passages out of this book. Mainly the parts where they were by the ice rim. So, I hope you enjoy it. Okay, this is a reading from James Burney's private journal, dated 1772. And we're going to start the reading off in December of 1772. And it was December the 10th. This morning we fell on with an island of ice, which at first we mistook for land. In the afternoon we saw another and 2 penguins, birds which are said never to be far from land. We tried sounding, but got no ground. At this we passed great queries of ice every day, the weather very cold. Through near midsummer at this point of the world, the quicksilver in the temperature kept constantly between 27.5 and 32. The islands we met with at sea is disintegrating by 2 different names, islands and fields, though in fact they are all islands. The fields of ice are low in level and are many in length. We have sailed close by one above 6 lengths without being able to get past through or seeing the end of it. The islands are very high, rigid pieces, seldom more than half a mile in length, and are about 150 feet high from the surface of the water. There are some of the largest islands at least as high as St. Paul's. I only saw 2 in this enormous height. One of them, I am certain, was much higher. The islands seem to change color as the weather changes. When the sun shines and the sky is clear, they are of a fine light blue and transparent. In bad, dirty weather, they resemble land covered with snow, the lower part appearing black. If a ship should run against a large piece of ice, I make no doubt but she would receive as much damage as from a rock. Okay, the next reading is from January the 12th, 1773. This day we again hoisted our boats out and got ice until it filled all our empty caskets, having more water than when we left the Cape of Good Hope. We were now in 64 degrees south latitude, weather better and warmer than before, the seasons being more advanced. Okay folks, so basically on Monday, February the 8th of 1773, the Resolution and the Adventurer got separated. It was foggy, and they fired weapons into the air and did not know which way the sound was going, and that probably just made matters worse. So they parted ways and headed to a New Highland, which of course is Australia, and that was their meeting point there by New Zealand. And this reading is from Captain Tobias. It's just like a side note. I guess the author of this book added it in here, and it says Tobias had begun to doubt if there was any such place, and they're referring to any such place like the land of Antarctica. If there was, it must be some spot not hospitable by reasons of the intense cold. And also Captain Cook had previously concluded that there was no land in the area, nothing but mountains of ice surrounded by ice fields. He was only sorry that in searching after this land he had spent so much time, which will become more valuable as the seasons advanced. Okay folks, so there you have it. They was stuck in ice, running around this ice wall, searching for a continent that didn't exist. They got lost, separated from each other, and could have very well died. But these are old first accounts of the Antarctic ice wall. Okay guys, I just want to do a little recap of what I've just read, and especially the part about March 12th, when it was in complete darkness and a massive iceberg was looming directly ahead of them. In the reading it said March 12th, and the year was 1842. It was in complete darkness. Yet if you go here to timeanddate.com, you can look up what kind of daylight there was during this time. Just go to this scroll down. I'm going to leave a link in the description box to this. There's a little drop down box. You may have to mess with it a little bit. See, once you get to a certain point, you're going to have to keep scrolling. Go to that. Then you'll have to continually go. I'm going to leave a link to it, so hopefully the link works and it'll take you directly to this year that I'm talking about, 1842. It was 24-hour sunlight, and they should not have been in complete darkness if there's a 24-hour sunlight in Antarctic. In fact, the sunlight stays 24 hours all the way up to the 21st of March, and it was there on March the 12th. So I hope that answers a few questions for you all. It should also be noted that they have here a warning: local time history for years before 1970 is not available for the South Pole. Instead, local time for McMurdo is used for the years before 1970. So we will be going by McMurdo's time, which of course is right here. Here's the coast of New Zealand. Here's McMurdo. It's a little island by Antarctica. And that was 24-hour daylight here in 1842. So they should have been 24-hour daylight all across here. All across where Ross and them was exploring. And it obviously wasn't, because the reading obviously said they almost hit an iceberg in total darkness. Alright guys, back to the readings. Ross departed the Franklins on December 17, 1842 for his third and final season in Antarctica. His desire was to penetrate the Weddell Sea and add to the research done by Weddell in 1822. Unfortunately, he met with dense, impenetrable ice pack and icebergs. Abandoning his plan, Ross crossed the Arctic Circle on March the 5th, 1843, and the Terror sailed for home. Ross wrote, "The shores of Old England came into view at 5:20 a.m. on the 2nd of September, and we anchored off Folkestone at midnight on the 4th. The voyage was complete after 4 years and 5 months at sea." Well guys, I hope this documentary helped you understand a little bit better of the troubles that these adventurers, in this case Captain James Clark Ross and his crew, ran into when they were searching for the southern magnetic pole. They did run into this beautiful ice ball here, and on March the 12th, 1842, there was of course no 24-hour sunlight in Antarctica. I don't know how the hell they want you to believe that there's 24-hour sunlight in Antarctica when it's clearly written in history that Ross and his crew almost hit an iceberg in the darkness and they caught hell. So in closing, just remember that you have a ice rim here and the sun does not shine on this rim 24 hours a day. If it did, of course, it would melt some of this ice, but this ice doesn't melt, not like the North Pole. The North Pole's ice melts. The South Pole's ice, it never melts.
The Freemasons live by a slogan, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted," so that they can keep us all in the dark regarding our true potential. And one of their very best tools is the southern continent of Antarctica. They used the Freemason Richard Byrd to push the lie. They erected the geographical South Pole as a ritual. I mean, Byrd had taken many trips to the North and South Pole, and in case you didn't know, his brother, Harry Byrd, was a governor and a senator, and did all of this work from 1916 to 1965. Both of them born to one of the wealthiest families in Virginia, and a member of the Federal Lodge No. 1 in Washington, D.C., these men will lie for each other and go to bat for each other and all of them will back each other no matter what. In fact, all of Bird's travels were financed by John D. Rockefeller.
And it came out in 2012 that the whole thing was staged as a publicity stunt by the new Rockefeller Center.
Now, who knows how deep Richard Byrd goes in all this, and exactly to what depth he was involved. He died, or was killed, not too long after Operation Deep Freeze, and his only son, Richard Byrd Jr., was found dead in a warehouse almost a month after his family had put him on a train. Every Mason will tell you that the art of Freemasonry is a glorious example of a most shining and noble morality, yet it's all kept a secret. They tell the lies that keep the world in argument. Now, for some evidence of this Freemason trickery, look no further than the current Guinness record holder for the North-South surface navigation, Sir Ran Fiennes. You can click here for an entire video showing that there is no north-south circumnavigation. And after you've watched this video and that video, if you still believe in the model we were all taught, well, then no evidence exists that will ever get you away from the lie that you love so much. Of course, you know about Freemason Robert Falcon Scott. Of course, this is where we get the name of Amundsen Scott from. You've also heard of the Ross Sea, I presume, which was named after yet another Freemason, Sir James Clark Ross. How about Sir Edward Hillary? Yes, another Freemason, member of the first expedition to cross Antarctica and reach the South Pole by land, doing so from 1955 to 1958. Or we can look at Elisha Kane, who was just another Freemason, also an explorer that is famous enough to have a crater on the moon named after him, and he did his journeys in 1853. Of course, in 1909, Robert E. Peary reached the North Pole, and in 1911, Roald Amundsen placed the flag at the South Pole. Yes, Peary and Amundsen were both Freemasons. And of course, you have another Mason, Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton, initiated in Navy Lodge number 2612 in 1901, passed in 1911, and raised in 1913. He separated from his crew. What follows is an amazing story of survival and heroism when the party was finally rescued and received on a ship captained by, yes, another Freemason, Luis Pardo. The list goes on, full of these Freemason tricks, these Freemason lies. And it doesn't just end at the North and South Pole. You see, our history is littered with Freemasons and their lies. In all walks of life, in all areas of study. Of course, you should recognize that Charles Darwin was, of course, a Freemason. Imagine that one. What about Charles Lindbergh, right? First to fly across the Atlantic Ocean? Perhaps. How about the reason kidnapping is a federal crime? Well, this is his doing, and the reason it's now headed by the FBI. All of that as a result of the Lindbergh case. Yes, in one of the earliest hoaxes or false flags, do some research on Charles Lindbergh and his child being kidnapped. You'll see for yourself what kind of government ran this country in 1927. And maybe he was the first to cross the Atlantic solo. I can't say that he wasn't. But what I can say is the flight taking 33 hours seems a bit suspicious. And as the media reported, I'm very sure that during the flight across the ocean, through snow and sleet, he slept. You heard me. First solo flight from New York to London, the man slept. The feat had already been attempted 6 times, and all 6 men never made it. They all died. Yet Charles Lindbergh, the Freemason, he did it, while dodging storm clouds at 10,000 feet and dodging waves as low as 10 feet. He also found time to sleep. Not a worry. Yep, those Masons are amazing indeed. It's like the Mason who went to the moon, and on his first step off the LEM, he pissed on the moon. And when he was ready to leave, the first time ever that it would be attempted, he said, "Roger, Houston, we're number 1 on the runway." Circuit breakers. So all in all, the deception here is becoming clear. Why would there be no footage of a 24-hour sun? Where's the proof? Where's the proof that we live on a ball? Go look at images from 70 degrees north versus 70 degrees south. On a globe, they should be nearly identical, but you'll see that the south is a barren wasteland of ice and penguins, and the north is filled with trees, flowers, bushes, deer, bears, squirrels. elk, and everything else you can imagine. Why do all of these South Pole and Antarctic flights and planes have no windows? Is there something they don't want people to see, perhaps? Like, what's that sun doing? Why is it when you look at the WorldView 4 satellite images, which cover the United States in a pattern like this, stop in Antarctica like this, in a very circular pattern? Universally through time, we've had legends that speak of Atlantis, or a sacred land located at the navel of the earth. Hindu mythology tells us about Meru as the mystical mountain of the earth's center. Like the Egyptians, the Indians conceived of a dwelling place of the gods known as Samaru. Hebrew legends speak of a place in the north called Luz. Many ancient lands speak of a first continent known as the imperishable sacred land, and is the most mysterious of the 7 continents. It is said to be located in the region of the North Pole. This sacred land is stated never to have shared the fate of the other continents, because it is the only one whose destiny it is to last from the beginning to the end. It is the cradle of the first man and the dwelling of the last divine mortal. Of this mysterious and sacred land very little can be said, except perhaps according to a poetical expression in one of the commentaries, that the pole star has its watchful eye upon it. Buddhist texts say that Shambhala can be reached only by a long and difficult journey across a wilderness of deserts and mountains, and warn that only those who are called to have the necessary spiritual preparation will be able to find it. One text says that the kingdom of Shambhala is round, but it is usually depicted as an 8-petaled lotus blossom. The modern theosophical tradition, too, recognizes that Shambhala is a real place. Shambhala, although no erudite Orientalist has yet succeeded in locating it geographically, is an actual land or district, the seat of the greatest brotherhood of spiritual adepts and their chiefs of earth today. From Shambhala at certain times in the history of the world, or more accurately, of our own fifth root race, come forth from the messengers or envoys of spiritual and intellectual work among men. It is surrounded by an akashic veil of invisibility, and an army of airplanes might fly over it and not see it. In it are gathered some of the most valuable records of the human race. There, surrounded by the greatest and most evolved human beings, the silent watcher of earth has his invisible abode. Meru, which was the Olympus of the Indians, is said to be situated in the center or navel of the earth. It was guarded by serpents, which watched the entrance to the realm of secret knowledge. According to tradition, it was the land of bliss of the earliest Vedic times. Occult teachings place it at the very center of the North Pole, pointing it out as the site of the first continent over the entire Earth. H.P. Blavatsky states that Meru is not the fabulous mountain in the navel or center of the Earth, but its roots and its foundations are in that navel, though it is in a far north itself. It connects it with the central land that never perishes. Occult teaching also corroborates the popular tradition, which asserts the existence of a fountain of life in the bowels of the Earth and in the North Pole. It is the blood of the Earth, the electromagnetic current, which circulates through all of the arteries, and which is said to be found stored in the navel of the Earth. In the book Paradise Found, William Warren writes, "The earliest inhabitants of the Tigro-Euphrates basin located the center of the Earth, not in their own midst, but in a far-off land of sacred associations where the holy house of God is situated, a land into the heart whereof man has not yet penetrated, a place underneath the overshadowing world tree." The Chaldean account of Genesis we read, "Human beings the great gods created, and in the earth the gods created for them a dwelling. In the midst of the earth they grew up and became great and increased in number. 7 kings, brothers of the same family, Iranian, Indian, Chinese, Scandinavian, and Aztec literature also refer to the ambiguous location of the center of the earth. The Japanese paradise was situated on top of the globe and at the same time at the center of the earth. It was called the Island of the Congealed Drop. Its first roof pillar was the earth's axis, and over it was the pivot of the vault of heaven. Similarly, the Chinese terrestrial paradise was also round in form and is described not only as at the center of the earth, but also as directly under Shangtai's heavenly palace, which is declared to be in the pole star and is sometimes called the Palace of the Center. The Egyptians located their Ta Neder, or Land of the Gods, in the extreme north. Today there is an echo of these ancient traditions in the fact that children send notes to Santa Claus or Father Christmas in his wonderland at the North Pole, asking for gifts. The Eskimos have legends that they came from a fertile land of perpetual sunshine in the north. In Psalm 48:2 of the Bible, Mount Zion is said to be in the far north. And in Ezekiel 28:13-14, Eden, the garden of God, is placed on the holy mountain of God. In Hebrew tradition, the primeval Eden is sometimes said to be at the center of the earth. According to the Hindu Karma Purana, an island called Shvetadipta, or White Island, lays in the northern sea. More recently, we have even more polar puzzles as far as the open polar sea. Many 19th century explorers believed that beyond the belt of pack ice at the perimeter of the Arctic Ocean there was an open polar sea, and possibly continental land as well. In 1827, an expedition led by Edward Perry ventured far north of Spitsbergen, over ice and along leads of open water. As they sledged north, the ice field became lighter and more fissured, and they eventually found themselves on the edge of what seemed to be a vast open polar sea, containing only a few scattered pieces of ice. While attempting to reach the North Pole in 1871 to 1873, two young Austrian explorers, Karl Weyprecht and Julius Payer, discovered the islands of Franz Josef Land and came to believe that they were the outliners of a continental landmass. Lieutenant George Washington DeLong hoped to find this land, and in 1879 he sailed in the Jeannette through the Bering Straits into the Arctic Ocean, planning to take advantage of the warm, north-flowing currents, which he believed would open a way through the pack ice. However, in June 1881, his ship sank in the pack ice northeast of the New Siberian Islands, a tragedy which DeLong and many of his men did not survive. Early Arctic explorers reported seeing birds and animals moving north as winter was setting in, instead of going south, and inferred that they were headed to a warm land that must lie in the north. Perry once experienced a heavy fall of black dust in Greenland and thought it might be volcanic dust from the unexplored land to the north. In 1904, Dr. R.A. Harris of the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey published an article explaining why he believed that there had to be a large body of undiscovered land or shallow water in the polar basin northwest of Greenland. He argued that the prevailing currents seemed to indicate the deflection by an unknown large landmass lying in this approximate area, that the Eskimos living on the northern fringes of the Arctic Ocean had a tradition that a landmass existed to the north, and that the disruption of the tides north of Alaska indicated a moderating effect explainable only by intervening land. Various Arctic explorers actually reported seeing land in the distance, though it should be noted that visibility can be poor and mirages are very common in this area. Have you ever heard of Crocker Land? Another famous disappearing land was called Crocker Land, discovered by Peary. He saw it on the 24th of June 1906 from atop a 2,000-foot mountain situated behind Cape Colgate in northern Greenland. Peary says that through his binoculars he was able to make out, apparently a little more distinctly, the snow-clad summits of a distant land in the northwest above the ice horizon. Peary estimated that Crocker Land lay 120 miles from the northern coast of Axel Heiberg Island. How about Bradley Land? Frederick A. Cook stated that on his journey to the North Pole in 1908, he looked for Crocker Land but did not find it at the location given by Peary. However, he said he seen a mountainous, ice-clad land slightly further from the shore, which he named Bradley Land. He saw it to the west of his line of march, north across the pack, on the 30th of March 1908, and again 31st of March. Prior to his attempt at the pole, Cook expressed the common belief that land would be found north of the Arctic Ocean. Jan Leprecht takes quite a different view on Cook and Peary and the controversy surrounding them. Leprecht speculates that the land had been magnified horizontally. Nevertheless, for the mirage to extend over a third or more of the horizon, without any noticeable degradation in brightness, the land itself would still have to be enormous. Lamprecht believes that Cook's photo of Bradley Land may also be a telescopic mirage, probably of the easternmost extension of Crocker Land, which he thinks is located on the Earth's outer surface, but is being covered up because it lies too close to the polar hole. He thinks that Keenan Land also could be a telescopic mirage of the same gigantic polar continent, seen at a distance of over 900 miles. Lamprecht also believes the polar land and hole might have been discovered in 1926, when Amundsen, Ellsworth, and Nobile made their transpolar flight from Spitsbergen to Alaska. but instead of publicizing their discoveries, they supposedly went straight to the military and were sworn to secrecy. If there is any land or polar opening in the region of the North Pole, they would surely interfere with the drift of pack ice. In this regard, Wally Herbert makes an interesting observation about his experience on the Trans-Arctic expedition. We began to feel that there was some obstruction along the imaginary line, which describes a circle around the pole at a radius of 260 miles. A hump, perhaps, over which the ice drifting north cannot pass. Nansen had faced a similar problem during his epic drift in the Fram. After the first 18 months, it had become evident that the 13-man crew of the Fram were unlikely to come any closer to the pole than 300 miles unless they left the warmth and safety of the ship and set out on foot. Although it is often said that the Arctic Ocean and seafloor have been thoroughly explored, it should be borne in mind that this ocean is 1.5 times the size of the United States of America, so the possibility of a small opening or island with a tunnel having gone undiscovered cannot be absolutely ruled out, and as far as the possibility of a cover-up is concerned, well, it's worth noting that according to some mystical and esoteric traditions, certain sacred areas of the earth are protected and concealed by the exercise of occult powers. Many people have asked about the 24-hour sun in the south. And while we know that there is no 24-hour sun, we don't know that there's no 24-hour light. If you take a look at a couple of these images, you'll see that if we put anything past these guys, that would be a mistake.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
Big surprise, yeah. It's cold out here.
Yeah, it is. It's like the South Pole.
It's like the deep South Pole, if there was one. There isn't, though. There isn't, though.